All right. Pleased to be joined by a seasoned veteran in the broadcast world of minor league baseball and current play-by-play voice of the Modesto Nuts, which is the advanced single A affiliate of the Seattle Mariners, Keaton Gillogly. Thanks so much for joining us, man. Welcome to the walk-off.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I got your last name right.
Gillogly. It's a little more of an O sound in the middle there.
Gillogly. Okay, there we go. Where are you at right now, my man?
I am in East Lansing right now, East Lansing, Michigan at the moment. I'm in the middle of my Michigan State women's basketball season.
Oh, nice. Right on. Do you actually go to Modesto when the season starts?
Yeah, so I've been bouncing back and forth between Modesto and East Lansing for the last 7 years now. So 6 months out in the desert, 6 months out in the winter tundra.
And of course, you've chosen the winter tundra during the winter. That's the time to be there, right?
Yeah, it's a nice solid 120-degree range I get every year.
Honestly, dude, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to chat some baseball here. We get so Blue Jays focused on this program sometimes that it's nice to widen our scope a little bit here. Although that being said, you actually do have a little bit of a tie to the Toronto Blue Jays, correct? You were the play-by-play of the Lansing Lugnuts back when they were still the affiliate with the Jays in, 2012?
Yeah, 2012. I was working with Jesse Goldberg-Strassler, who's still over there as well. It was my first affiliated internship. Before that, I had worked a year in the summer collegiate ranks and also a year in the indie ball ranks as well. So that was my first affiliated opportunity, and that was the 2012 year. So it was the starting rotation to start that year was Noah Syndergaard, Aaron Sanchez, Justin Nicolino, and Anthony DeSclafani, who's made himself a nice career now as well. Kevin Pillar was the starting center fielder, and then there were a couple other guys there too. But yeah, those were the big arms that year.
That must have been really exciting for you to finally get into that affiliate side of things, eh?
It was, and it was fun. I was excited to have the parent club and just being able to see guys that were affiliated. I mean, I had started the collegiate and the indie ball ranks, and so it was very, very different in that regard. But yeah, man, I got there and I was like, oh wow, these guys are really good. And then I realized, oh, this team is just really good. But that was a fun year. I mean, those guys were so young. Noah Syndergaard was still so timid. He hadn't grown his hair out yet, and he was basically still figuring out his body. Like he had jumped such great size over his whatever it was, 16, 17 when he was 16 or 17. So yeah, man, he was still kind of figuring it out, and all those guys were, but man, they were loaded.
Yeah, I remember that was the 3-headed pitching monster, they called it, and just all three of them. Just pretty impressive stuff. I know Lansing is no longer the affiliate of the Blue Jays. Modesto also just wound up getting shifted, right? It used to be
Advanced A. So, we got shifted from Advanced A down to Low A now, and then when I started there, we were the Rockies affiliate, and so we've been the Mariners affiliate now for the last 3 years, or 4 years if you count the non-year in 2020.
When it shifted to the Mariners system, was that a little bit of a freak out for you, or are you such a baseball nerd it didn't matter?
No, it didn't really matter. I mean, I had also worked a year with the Kane County Cougars as well. So at this point, I've been in 4 different umbrellas. So when I was with the Cougars, they were the Cubs affiliate. So I've been in the Blue Jays, Cubs, Rockies, and Mariners systems now at this point. So no, I was good, man. I mean, I was just kind of rolling with it, and the Mariners bought into some of the ownership in Modesto as well. So they've done some upgrades, and it's been a really nice partnership so far.
So for our listeners, if you can tell us a little bit about your world. You've been doing play-by-play for almost a decade for both, like you said, women's basketball and minor league baseball. What was it that got you into the booth?
Yeah, it was my sophomore year of college, and I was going to a D3 school that was outside of Chicago in the suburbs. I grew up in the city in Chicago, so I was there, and I went to that university, Dominican University, because it had 4 or 5 things that I was kind of interested in studying. So I took classes in those my freshman year to see what one I liked and what I wanted to do, and I didn't really like any of them. All of a sudden, I was into my sophomore year, I was like, I don't want to do any of these, and it was one of those things where you're 19 or 20 at that time, and it kind of dawned on me that I was like, oh, whatever I'm doing now is what I'm trained to do for decades. I don't want to do any of this. So I just kind of started thinking. I was just trying to run through what did I want to do? What did I want to do? What did I want to spend my time doing? And I remember I showed up late to my human resource management class one day, so I didn't get to sit in the back and chat with my friends and distract myself. So I had to sit in the front, and I remember sitting there and he was droning on about something that I was not paying attention to at all. And I remember thinking to myself, boy, I'm pretty good at telling stories, and I know sports pretty well. And I want something that takes me to something. I don't want to be somewhere every day. I want to go to something for work. And I was like, well, I think sports broadcasting might work. And then like an image of Jim Nance popped into my head, and I was like, boy, I could definitely go into broadcasting. Well, if I go into broadcasting, I'm going to have to transfer. Shoot, man, I got to transfer. So I went back to my dorm after that class and started looking up broadcasting schools, and eventually ended up finding Valparaiso University through some connections and some people and stuff, and ended up at Valpo and graduated there in 2011 and been running since.
I love so much that you're like, what do I want to do? And then you figured out what you want to do and you just pursued it. That's great.
Yeah. It's been quite a wild ride.
So, brother, have you by chance seen Brockmire?
I have, yeah.
Okay, it is incredible, but I think it's kind of funny because there's like this misconception with fans when it comes to play-by-play announcers that they're like Brockmire, right? Just a talent. They can show up drunk, flip on the mic, and just let the magic roll, right? And I have my radio and television broadcasting degree as well, and I am well aware that that is not how things work whatsoever. So I'm curious for you, what does your game day look like? What's your routine? What kind of prep are you doing before you get into the booth?
Yeah, it's pretty different for anything that I'm doing, right? So, I mean, at the moment right now, my weeks look like, I'm running 2 podcasts on the Locker Room app, which is how we met. I'm running 2 baseball podcasts on the Locker Room app. I've got a weekly coaches show with the head coach for the program, and then we usually have like 2 games. So, kind of depends on our travel on what our day is. But from a baseball perspective, in the minor leagues, it's a little bit different too, where you have a lot going on, but I've got a really great position and a really great opportunity with Modesto. They really allow me to be the broadcaster and be the director of broadcasting. So I'm not showing up at 9:00 in the morning into the office. I'm not having to run around and do some of the extra stuff that a lot of other broadcasters have to do. So for me, it was mostly during baseball was, wake up, turn on MLB Network. Let's get some of the news. Is there a day baseball game going on? It's nice being on the West Coast because baseball starts quite early out there.
Yeah.
So let's get some baseball on in the background, and then get my chores done for like an hour, whatever the little like life stuff you got to do because you still have to do life stuff.
Right. You still got to live your life.
Yeah. And then attack the day. So, we got to do the game notes. So doing game notes, catching up on any of the roster moves. So that takes a few hours. Living out in California, it was like a 40-minute drive for me to the ballpark. So, I'm spending like an hour and a half in the car every day. And then, get to the ballpark and handle whatever needs to be handled, whether it's lining up interviews with other media organizations or doing my interviews, having conversations with guys. And then really, I mean, it's mostly just having conversations when it comes to baseball. I mean, you kind of get into these different talks with different scouts that are there or the coaches or the other broadcasters or whoever's around. And it kind of jogs your memory or jogs something in your brain. And when something pops up or something comes into your head, well, let's go do some research on it. Let's go look it up. Let's go make sure I have that. So, when it comes to baseball, and especially once you kind of get into the rhythm of the season after, 2 or 3 months, it really comes about where it doesn't feel like you're prepping for the game that night. It doesn't feel like you're prepping for this broadcast. There are specific things you need to make sure you have on top of your mind when it comes to who the starting pitcher is and some of the other little nitty gritty stuff. But for the most part, during the day, it really feels like I'm just doing the baseball research that's necessary. Like I'm just kind of following my creativity or following whatever piques my interest and then making sure I'm doing the research on that and finding a little bit more so that I can bring a unique perspective of that into the game and into the broadcast that night.
It's funny because you did kind of touch on this, and this is one thing that I think broadcasters that aren't involved in especially minor league baseball have no idea how much that roster is turning over. Is that something that took some getting used to, just constantly? Because you got to keep your eye on it. Otherwise, you're going to miss someone being sent up or down, right?
Yeah. I wouldn't say I had to really get used to it. I think it was kind of par for the course. It's a pretty routine thing down in the minor leagues. And, it's not like they're hiding it from me or, I'm getting a heads up. A lot of times I'll get a heads up the night before. Hey, we might have this move. We're going to have that move. I haven't told the guy don't do anything yet, but just so you know. So, no, seriously. I mean, especially for some of the bigger promotions or for a guy who's about to get released or a guy who's about to get sent down, those are touchy situations. Those are touchy moments. And it takes a lot of tact and a lot of care from the managers and the coaching staff. So, I'll get a tip off sometimes on that. And other times, you show up to the ballpark and there's a new face there and you're like, oh, hey, what's going on? And now you get to meet somebody new. So, I mean, it's fun. You get a lot of people cycling through and you just get to meet so many different people from so many different backgrounds. And, it's one of the glories of our game.
Do you have a moment in the booth that kind of stands out to you? Something that happened that maybe was just way out of the ordinary, or just a major call that you were just thrilled to be involved with, or something weird that happened?
Yeah, man. 2019 was a hell of a run. I mean, we had Mariners. People are seeing now the Mariners are getting their love for what they have talent wise in the minor leagues, and I got to see it firsthand last year, and it was pretty ridiculous. One that comes to mind from 2019 would be Julio Rodriguez.
Right.
He gets called up his first game. He has 4 hits and a grand slam. And Dave Niehaus, longtime broadcaster, the late broadcaster for the Mariners, who is widely revered, had the great grand salami call that he had come up with. And when we had switched over to the Mariners, it was one of those things where it's like, ooh, I really want to use this call just once, just a little homage. And I'm not going to take it. I'm not going to appropriate it, but I want to use it one time. It was something that was always kind of in the back of my mind for like 3 years, and I hadn't used it. And then Julio Rodriguez hits this grand slam to cap this insane debut. And it was like a total rocket, like no doubter. I mean, just a line drive that was like 111 off the bat or something ridiculous. And I used it. And it was one of those ones where we were on MILB TV too. So my call was over the video. And so it got picked up and kind of sent around a little bit and picked up by the Mariners and stuff. So that was fun. And just seeing the outpouring of of the fans just like feeling connected to Dave Niehaus. It wasn't them connecting with me. It was them connecting with Niehaus and with Julio Rodriguez. So it was just a really cool moment to see the Mariners fan base just connect with this moment of their prospect and being able to pay homage to a guy who's so revered in Mariners fandom and in Mariners lore. So that was a pretty cool moment. And on top of that, the Cal Raleigh was our catcher in 2019, and he came up with a theme song for his own home runs. Which was a Beef Boy parody song, and then we had a championship run in 2017 that was pretty special, and there were some pretty ridiculous plays in that, and some of those guys are in the big leagues now. So that was a pretty fun run.
That's very cool. Name names. We want to know who
from the 17 team.
Yeah.
So I could pull up the Baseball Reference and be able to run through it a little bit easier, but the play that I've got stuck in my mind right now was we were in. It was the 10th inning. Yeah, it was the 10th inning, and we had just given up. The Nuts had just given up a lead in the 9th. So Matt Caracity, who's been up and down a little bit, had given up the lead, and he had been so rock solid all year. So it was very rare for him to blow a save. So he blows this save. Game is tied. We go into go into extra innings in the 10th, and they've got the winning run at second base. There's a ground ball up the middle, and our second baseman, Jordan Cowan, has a bum shoulder at the time. So he can't throw. He can't throw more than 90 feet at this moment. He would end up having surgery after the season. And the shortstop, Donovan Walton, who's in the big leagues now with the Mariners, made his debut in 2019. He was the shortstop. And so there was this play where it was a ground ball up the middle that got tipped off of the base, and so it was kind of slow into shallow center field. And we knew that Cowan couldn't get it. The second baseman couldn't get it. So the shortstop, Walton, goes out, lays out for it, grabs it, turns around, throws all the way to home plate because he didn't have that chance at first. Throws to home plate, gets the guy for the third out. What? We come out the next inning, and then that second baseman who couldn't make the throw hits the go-ahead home run, and they win that, and then they go on to complete the sweep right after that. So that was kind of a play that those two guys continually talk about. And one of the silver linings of the shutdown was I was able to do a series of interviews with a lot of guys who had come through Modesto over the last couple of years. And so I got to talk to Walton, got to talk to Cowan about that. And I asked about the play, and they're just like, oh man, this is great. I love this play. We talk about this play every time we get into a new clubhouse. So those kind of moments were fun, and just, seeing the guys light up when they talk about some of those moments and some of those highlights.
Now, you kind of touched on it. The no season last year, 2020 was just a mess, obviously, with this pandemic. And I know minor league baseball was one of the most affected things that you could possibly have. I know we've had on the show a couple minor league guys that just didn't even wind up being able to play, had to sit the season out. We talked to a couple guys, Joey Murray and Jordan Groshans, a couple Blue Jays prospects that were at the alternate site, and just what a weird mental hurdle it was not actually playing games. So from your perspective, it had to have been a bit of a messed situation too. I mean, you've been broadcasting minor league ball for almost 10 years. What was your summer like?
It was pretty cool, actually. So Modesto was awesome. My GM over there, Zach Brockman, has been just incredible. Great communication. I haven't been blindsided by anything. They've done everything they possibly can for me. So, Modesto's been great. And I know that hasn't been everywhere, but Modesto's just been absolutely awesome in everything they've done for me so far. So when I first got back out to California, it was really even a question if I was going to go because the minor league season had been shut down like 2 days before I was going to leave after the basketball season. So it's kind of a question if I was going to go. And the GM was like, hey, look, if you feel comfortable getting out here, like, go for it. We've got some work for you. Like, we want you here. But if not, like, feel free to stay in Chicago or stay out in the Midwest if you need to. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to do it. So I got out there and, I ended up doing a bunch of digital content stuff for them. So I did a full series of interviews with a bunch of guys who had come through. That's all up on the Modesto Nuts YouTube page if anybody wants to go check those out. So I did a lot of that, pulled a lot of old highlights as well. And then I did some of those play-by-play from home videos. We did a series with people sending us some of their home videos, and I would do some play-by-play over that. So that was fun.
Oh, nice.
And then they laid me off at the end of June. And so then I was kind of free. I was like, all right, well, what am I going to do? And I'm a big hiker. So I actually, myself and the voice of the Lancaster Jethawks, Jason Schwartz, he and I went out and did a bunch of hiking. So we slept on top of El Cap, Yosemite. We did a 4-night backpacking trip to Yosemite. We did another 4-night backpacking trip in the Sierras over by Thousand Island Lake. We did a 12-day trip out to Utah. And in all, I ended up doing just under 250 trail miles over 3 months from July through the end of September, which is something I've always wanted to do, but I'm always doing baseball. So kind of ready for it and just got out into the wilderness.
Buddy, what a nice change of pace hearing about your summer. Oh, man.
Yeah, I was
normally I ask that question and people are like, oh, it was the worst.
Yeah, no, it was, I had the opportunity to do something I really always wanted to do. And I got to work a little bit too, which was great. So
you're a guy, Keaton, that has seen more minor league ball up close and personal than I would say the average baseball fan has. And I know there are a lot of knocks that have, so we had some minor league guys on who obviously were incredibly pleased with their opportunity to play professional baseball, but also had some damning things to say about the way minor league ball operates at times. Obviously, I know you're an employee of the Modesto Nuts, so without biting the hand that feeds, have you seen some of that thing? I know one of the big ones is pay that was brought up, and just how, especially when it comes to A ball and low A in particular, that if you don't have parents that are financially supporting you or didn't get a bonus, you're hurting. Have you noticed that? Or do you have any experiences with stuff like that you've seen firsthand?
Yeah. I haven't. You don't really see it from the guys, right? Like when you walk around the clubhouse, when you're interacting with these guys, you don't really see it, but it is there. And, they are being paid very, very low wages. Yeah. And they're not getting paid for spring training, and they're not getting paid for the off season. So it's a really tough situation that we're in right now. And they are going to increase the pay for these guys. The Blue Jays were one of the first organizations to do it. And so that's all well and good. They are, at least it looks like, doing it at the expense of more minor leaguers, right? They've contracted the affiliated ranks. They're still going to allow some opportunities for some of these other partnered minor leagues, but that paycheck's not coming from Major League Baseball the way it is right now. So Major League Baseball is able to basically cut some of what they're paying to increase the pay for some of these guys at the affiliated ranks. So that's kind of where it is in the state of it right now. The Mariners have been in a situation, and in Modesto, we've been in a situation where if those guys need something, they're getting it. They've got a great weight room built out over there now. They're getting more meals taken care of, which is a good thing. Healthier meals, which is getting taken care of.
Which is huge. It really is. Yeah.
So, those are good things. But yeah, I mean, the pay is tough, and it extends into the front offices as well. I've done full season unpaid internships. I've been paid $500 a month for months at a time. So, it's tough. It's a very tough situation. And, it's frustrating as a baseball fan to watch, because it is a barrier for accessibility for people. And It does feel like you have to get over this economic hurdle in order to be a part of this game. And that's only going to exclude people. And when we look at the state of the game right now, we need more inclusivity. And the more point of views we get, the better the game is going to be. And we do have that barrier right now. And I don't know what the solution is, but there definitely needs to be something, because it's really tough for people to get into the game right now.
It is, and I don't know what the solution is either. I know former Lansing Lugnut Michael Krause was just on the show, and he was talking about, and it was the one thing he mentioned that really stood out to me was that if it wasn't for the guys with the big bonuses paying for meals in a lot of cases, now this was 2012, so I know things have changed, but he even said, he's like, if it wasn't for the guys with the big bonuses that were paying for meals in a lot of cases, guys would have had to just quit the team and go get jobs, which I know there's a lot of people who are like, well, it's baseball. Maybe that's, we shouldn't cry for ball players, but it was eye-opening to be like, holy crap. Like if it, like the players are supporting each other, it's not even coming from the organization.
Yeah, it's tough. And, the per diem's like $25 a day. It's going to be good that they're getting rid of the clubhouse dues, but that's something as well that's tough. And especially for a lot of the Latin players who are sending money back, those things are tough. And when you think about fueling your body and being the best athlete you can, having to skip a meal here or there, it is a tough situation. It's going to hurt you. I've skipped meals at times during minor league seasons to save a buck here and there. And it's tough. It makes it really difficult. And I think when you look at the state of the minor leagues right now, it really almost feels like, if you just want to look at it from a cold-blooded point of view, it's a great opportunity for a competitive advantage. If you start paying your minor leaguers $40,000 a year, they're going to work their butts off. Like, there is a great competitive advantage to be had there just to get these guys to livable wages.
100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. So let's talk a little MLB here. I know you just had me on your own live MLB podcast on the Locker Room app. Actually, before we even get into the MLB, can you tell our listeners a little about this Locker Room app? Because I fell in love with it, man. I'd never even heard of it before, and it's just such a fantastic platform.
Awesome. Well, good. I'm glad you fell in love with it. We actually just had Susan Waldman, the Yankees broadcaster, on last night for our Cali Colleagues show. So the Locker Room app is an audio-only conversation app, similar to Clubhouse. I'm sure people have seen that after Elon Musk got on it. We have recording, which is nice. And so it's a place where a lot of people are able to kind of connect and have some conversations. And record their podcasts as well. So I'm running 2 podcasts, live podcasts on there, MLB on Locker Room, which is on Friday afternoons, starting usually around 2:00 in the afternoon. Kind of depends on when my guests are free. So it's kind of a flexible situation. So we're going to 2:00 this Friday though. And then typically Tuesday nights at 7:30 Eastern, we're doing the Cali Colleagues. So myself and Jill Guerin, who's the voice of the Visalia Rawhide, we've been hosting a show. So we've done 10 episodes now, once a week since the end of the World Series. So that's been a fun show, but it's a great place for content creators to connect, to meet, have some conversation.
So interactive too.
Yes. And it's a great place as well to, and it's going to be a great kind of screen companion when games start up. It's going to be a lot of fun to just kind of connect with some other baseball fans on there while you're watching a game, if you want to step away from maybe a national broadcast or if you're just watching something else. So it's a great place if you're a content creator or a baseball fan. Go ahead, download the Locker Room app. It is iOS only as of right now because it's still a very, very young app. We've only been in the App Store for a few months, a little before the holidays. But yeah, the Locker Room app, go ahead, download it. You can find me at Gillogly, Gillogly, and we can talk some baseball.
Oh, honestly, I found myself just thinking, I'm like, great, this is a rabbit hole for baseball that I'm never going to get to the bottom of. So for all the baseball nerds out there, it's a great little app, Locker Room app. Okay. I want to start with we talked about this briefly on your program last Friday about the expanded playoffs. And despite the MLB's best efforts to kind of push it through the MLBPA there, the MLBPA said absolutely not. And you had an idea, though, for if we are going to expand playoffs, how it should be done. And if you could kind of get into that, because I really thought that was you nailed it.
Yeah, so they're definitely going to expand the playoffs when we get to this new CBA. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that that's something the owners obviously want. They signed that huge deal last year during the shutdown with Turner Sports.
Yeah,
we're
so much money to be made to do it, right? Like,
yeah, so we're going to get more playoffs. That's for sure. The question is how much more. And the first thing that I kind of focus on when we talk about expanding playoffs is making sure that we still have that competitive advantage for the teams that perform the best during the regular season. One of the things I love about baseball is the sample size, is the just the girth of the season,
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that is highlighted when we look at how we determine our champion in this game. So the first thing that I looked at is, before we start to expand the teams in the field, let's just expand the amount of games, right? If we have more playoff games, you can make more of that playoff money. So if we were to expand the division series out from a best of 5 to a best of 7, if we expand the wild card round out from just the 1-off to the best of 3, that's a help as well. And, look, that's not going to get you to the amount of games in the postseason that another round would, but to at least extend some of that so that you feel like you're making up some of that money before you start to go out and expand to a point where we're bringing in 14 or 16 teams. And I don't think they'll have 16 playoff teams in the future when they do get through this next CBA.
They better not.
No, I don't think they will. Rob Manfred already said he wouldn't. And, Rob Manfred wouldn't say something like that if it weren't true.
If that was the plan, yeah.
So, we would have heard him use a little more of the politics speak if that was actually the plan. So I don't think that's the case. I think we probably see somewhere between 12 and 14. I can get there with 12. I think 14 would be too much. But at least expanding some of those early rounds too, I think would be a big boost, because when you think about it, typically the better team is going to have a better chance the longer the series goes.
Yes.
And if we have that, that's going to be a nice advantage for the teams that perform the best during the regular season.
I mean, as a Blue Jays fan, it was great to get that. I mean, it was a 60-game season, so I feel like it was such an anomaly.
Yeah.
The things that they put into place there are irrelevant, right? And it was fantastic to watch some playoff baseball for my team that would not have been involved, right?
Right.
And in the end, it did wind up being, I truly do believe that the Rays and the Dodgers were the best teams in Major League Baseball. And I know it got a little lucky that it wound up that way in the end, because as soon as you start putting more teams in, there is a chance of an upset. But no, I would not want to see 162 games and then watch them go to 16 teams. It just seems, why play 162?
Right. And, then it comes down to the competitive question as well, right? Like, we have a competitive issue in our game right now with not enough teams trying to win. And it started after this most recent CBA, and it started with what the Astros did, and it worked. And so people started copying it. And when you do expand the playoffs, it is kind of, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Are we going to see more competitiveness with more playoff teams because you're closer to getting there? Or are we going to see less competition for these playoff spots because owners are going to feel like, well, we might be able to sneak in anyway?
It's a good question, because it is like, are they going to spend more money to try and make the playoffs? Or are we just going to see a bunch of teams that are under 500? That, that's the last thing we would like to see in baseball playoffs is, a team that's 80 and 80.
Right. And, you want to see a team too, like the teams that are at their best, right? I don't want to see a team that feels like it's a ragtag team. This is Major League Baseball. Like, I shouldn't feel like I'm just watching you put together all of these random little parts. I want to see the best of the best. I want to see you construct a team. I don't want to just see you pull whatever's off the scrap heap.
Exactly. And we did kind of touch on this, that baseball is, there's problems with the game. Okay, so I'm very curious how you feel about this, because in today's MLB, prospects are, being developed in-house has become paramount. It's like the most important thing in baseball is developing your own talent, creating your own stars. So what is your opinion on how we have watched 3 different organizations in the last year and a bit trade literally generational talents in their prime? Like Francisco Lindor, right? 26 years old, Betts 27, even just the Arenado trade. I mean, I know he's 30, but let's look at it. These are 3 guys that are literally the best at their position in baseball. And if not, we're drawing straws, they're arguably the best at their position. And I know each situation is different, and I know that there's all sorts of stuff that play into this, but how do you feel about teams moving homegrown talent in their prime?
Yeah, it's frustrating. And I think it speaks to what is a systematic flaw with the game at the moment. And it does, again, come back to the competitive question. Right now, we see owners valuing controllable minor leaguers more than your elite players right now, right? Nolan Arenado is not on an absurd contract. This is not a team shedding payroll just because the contract isn't worth it. He's not getting value. The Yu Darvish trade by the Cubs to the Padres was not shedding an albatross of a contract.
Yeah.
That is Yu Darvish getting paid his worth, and they still ended up trading him. The Francisco Lindor situation, another one where you could make the case it's a little bit cleaner that it's okay. We don't think we're going to be able to sign him. okay, that's at least a conversation. But at the same time, why? Like, why are we not going to be able to have teams sign these players to stick around? And that part is frustrating. And I think that's where the CBA is really going to break down. From a player's perspective, how do we get these teams to continue to be competitive? And, in the Rockies situation too, listening to Dick Monfort and Jeff Bridich and talk about that trade, it felt like they think they're trying to win. Like, they say they're trying to win, and they might actually believe that this is a move that's going to make them better in the long run because they were afraid he was going to opt out. I don't know that he was going to do that, but at the same time, like, we need a whole different economic system in this game, because if you get to the big leagues when you're 23, that's really impressive, right? Like, you're a darn good player if you're getting to the big leagues at 23. That means you're not going to be a free agent until you're 30. So those guys are not getting deals. And if you're your mid-level, kind of middle-class free agent, those are the guys that are getting hurt right now. The counter argument to that is, well, we have arbitration, so these guys are getting paid based on what they're doing and how they're playing. But at the same time, the arbitration system is a little bit flawed and outdated because they're still looking at a lot of the counting stats, not your rate stats.
Yes.
So guys who are performing better than what their counting stats are, they're getting paid a little bit less than what they should be. So the whole system of just getting paid for what your worth is and getting paid accurately is pretty out of whack right now. But at the same time, if you think back to some of the big contracts that guys were signing just a few years ago, right? Like before the last CBA, those were not working out. I mean, think about that run of contracts, whatever it was, maybe 5-7 years ago right now.
Yeah.
That run of big player contracts and pitcher contracts that were terrible. They didn't plan out at all. So I can see from an owner's perspective how, hey, look, we have the data that tells us when you turn 30, you will regress, and we don't need to be paying these guys as deeply into their careers because, we're not in the steroid era now, and that certainly skewed things as well.
Yes, it did. Absolutely. I don't know. Like, one of the big things that I can't wrap, my heart just hurt for Rockies fans when that news came out last week. Like, I can't even imagine watching your front office pay another team $50 million to take your best player, not just your best player, a player that was homegrown, came up through the system, that all these fans had emotional ties to, and that was locked up. I know the opt-out thing, and it just optically looks so bad in my opinion.
Even if he had opted out, they would have ended up spending less money than what they're spending right now.
Yeah.
Instead of $50 million, they could have just paid this year and then let him opt out. And it's not like they got major guys back in that deal. Like, those aren't franchise changing players.
Even the Betts thing kind of bothers me. And I know that there's all this talk. They tried to lock him up. He wasn't going to sign in Boston. But why weren't they laying the groundwork 3 years in advance to that? I don't understand why it was 12 months out that they're like, oh, maybe we can't sign him now, Like, and it's one thing, and I know I'm a homer here, so of course I'm going to put a little bit of praise on the Jays front office with this, but even that Marcus Semien signing, right, where they went to him and they basically overpaid him to only take a 1-year deal and to move position, and that's to set up Bo Bichette to be their lifelong shortstop, or at least gain them brownie points with him. Where was Boston 4 years ago? I just, and Lindor, you're right with Lindor. Like, Cleveland's such a small market. They're the one that might get a pass, right? But
it's a tough situation. But when, you look at the Red Sox and Mookie Betts situation, that was a case where they were bogged down by some tough contracts after the Dave Dombrowski era. And so that does make it a little bit difficult.
Yes.
And when you ask these owners and the executives, hey, look, what are you going to do? This guy is not going to sign. You're going to lose him after this year. What are you going to do about it? Do you have to trade that guy? Otherwise, you get nothing. So
yes.
There is something there where you do need to make these moves. And I'm not saying we're going to just outlaw those types of those types of moves with whatever comes up in the next CBA and how things end up playing out. Those things are still definitely going to happen. But it's just, the issue is how much it's happening and just the whole body of work. And look, we can look at some of the other organizations that are clearly trying to win, right? The Dodgers are very clearly trying to win. They spent the money. They traded for him in the contract year, and they paid him. They traded for Manny Machado, and that rental season. Okay, that makes sense. The Cardinals traded for Paul Goldschmidt at the end of his contract with the Diamondbacks, and then they went out and signed him. We expect them to keep Nolan Arenado. If I don't expect him to opt out. He's not going to get that same kind of cash somewhere else if he were to opt out. So those things are still definitely going to happen, but just the scale at which they are is definitely concerning, and it speaks to an economic issue in the game right now.
100% it does. Absolutely. And it's interesting to see because you go back 5 years and these were contracts that everyone said were immovable. Like you couldn't move a Mookie Betts on the contract he's on right now, but of course you could right now. Like 5 years ago, that would seem impossible to do. It's like the George Springer signing. Like even after the Jays did that, I'm like, well, the truth is in 2 years, they could probably still move him if they wanted to,
Yeah. So, we'll see how it all kind of plays out, but yeah, it's definitely a bit frustrating where it feels like teams are making some of these moves, not with the idea of trying to win, but with the idea of just making dollars and cents decisions. And it's especially frustrating when you look at the increased revenue of the game over the last 10 years. And then you look at the fact that player revenue has actually gone down over the last couple of years, the last 2 or 3 years. The average contract, the average AAV for these guys has gone down over the last 2 years. So yeah, we're still seeing some of the major contracts, but it's those guys in the middle that aren't getting compensated. And it's definitely, the game's kind of out of whack right now.
The middle class is suffering big time. Absolutely. Yeah. So it is official. Major League Baseball has announced that they're going with 7-inning doubleheaders again and runners on second in extra innings. How do you feel about that?
I'm okay.
Me too, actually. I kind of like the 7-inning doubleheaders. Just as a viewer, you can sit down and watch 2 games. Whereas like when it was 9, it 8. I'm a baseball fanatic, and 8 hours seems like a lot of baseball.
Yeah. I don't like the 7-inning doubleheaders. I do understand that we probably need it because we're going to have an issue with pitching this year. Nobody threw more than 90 innings last season. So there's going to be a major issue with innings this season. So I don't like it, but I understand that it's necessary. I think, I'm a little nervous about those split doubleheaders. Remember last year, it was only going to be your traditional like back-to-back game type doubleheaders.
Yes.
That feels like a money decision, which I understand these owners have lost a lot of money. I don't know that I believe they've lost as much money as they've said, but there has been a lot of loss, right? Let's not sugarcoat it.
Yeah, you can't deny it for sure.
No, it's a major issue. And so that is a way to bring in some more money. So I don't feel super great about doing a split doubleheader with 7-inning games. But again, we are going to have major issues with pitching this season. And then the runner at second base, I've had it in the minor leagues for the last couple of years. And it was one of those things where in the minor leagues, I was like, this is all right. This is actually kind of okay. I'm good with it. I don't ever want to see the big leagues, but this is okay.
Yeah.
And then I got to the big leagues last year and I was like, I think I kind of like this. It gives you a little juice. Like you get into extra innings and you're kind of like ready, and it brings a little extra strategy into the game in that extra inning period. And I don't know. I kind of like it.
I kind of am on board with what you're saying here. It reminds me a little bit of the shootout in hockey, where when it first came in, everyone was like, this isn't hockey. And now it's like, well, it's fun to watch. Just don't bring it into the playoffs, right? Like just leave it in the regular season and we're fine.
Yeah. And, they're not bringing it into the postseason. So that's good. That's a positive. Yep. And, it's kind of like your college football overtime as well, where it's okay, let's ramp it up. You're in the red zone, you're in scoring position. So there is something there. And watching some baseball this summer with some people who don't watch baseball at all or are completely unfamiliar with the game, it did kind of perk them up. And I found it myself too. Like I got a little extra adrenaline boost just even as a viewer. I'm like, all right, well, hey, I know it's been kind of a slog of a game at this point maybe, but you know what? Let's go. Like we're in extra innings. Like you got to stay on your toes, and there's definitely an extra adrenaline boost.
And there is something to be said about who needs to watch a 16-inning baseball game in the beginning of May. Like, I get what they're trying to do. So yeah. I'm pretty much on board with what you're saying there.
To be clear, though, I like 16-inning games. Like I'm down. I don't want these games don't need to artificially end. Like that's the beauty of baseball, at least for me. Like I come home after a game and there's a West Coast game in the 13th, 14th inning. Like sweet, like I'm down. Like let's watch some baseball. So
yeah, I
don't want those actually removed from the game at all. Like I like those, even in the minor leagues. Like they're fun. Sure, some days are tougher than others, but like I'm down for some of these extra inning games. Like this is the beauty of the game. So I'm not super stoked about trying to get those out of the game.
Yeah. Well, they are.
Yeah.
They are. All right. Before I let you go here, Keaton, I need some predictions from you. If you had to pick this year's ALCS and NLCS. Who are baseball's top 4 in 2021?
Yeah. So I know the Pacoda projections just came out within the last day or two of us recording this. And, I haven't dived super deeply into my predictions yet, which is definitely something I'll be doing as we kind of move forward. Yes. So this is kind of my knee jerk, seat of the pants prediction. So I want to reserve the right to change this. And I don't want people considering me flip flopping when I get.
We'll give you the right to flip flop. Sure.
So, no, I mean, in the National League, first and foremost, the Dodgers, for sure.
Yes.
I mean, they're absolutely elite. They're probably the best team in Major League Baseball. And then, when you look at kind of the rest of the league, obviously the Padres are super impressive. So they would definitely have the opportunity to be there. The National League East is going to be very interesting. The Braves were great. They were already there last year. The Mets are going to be very good this year. So, that's going to be a fun battle to watch. I think my gut's telling me the Padres, that pitching staff is just ridiculous. They've got so much experience. When you look at Yu Darvish and Blake Snell, those guys have pitched in the World Series. They have been at the pinnacle. They are elite pitchers right now. So I'm going to take the Dodgers and the Padres on the National League side. Over in the American League, I think it's very interesting as well. Obviously, the Yankees are going to be interesting with their pitching. The Blue Jays have added so much. They're going to be a lot of fun to watch. That infield you guys have is going to be so much fun to watch. I do worry about the pitching staff, which you and I have talked about. Yes. So, let's hope you guys sign another starter because that could go a really long way. But I love Kirby Yates too, by the way. That was a great signing.
Very under the radar signing. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, and he had a down year last year because he got hurt. So, Kirby Yates is a guy who's got a chance to be really, really good.
Especially for $5.5 million. I know that there are some incentives in there that can get him up to 8 or 9, but I mean, for $5.5 million guaranteed, signing.
That's perfect. That's right in the wheelhouse. I think the AL West is regressing right now. The Astros are not going to be as good as they were. The A's are not as good as they were last year. The Mariners are not yet ready to compete. The Angels still have question marks in their starting rotation. So I don't think anybody out of the AL West is going to end up in that Final Four. And then the AL Central, the White Sox. White Sox are really good. Liam Hendricks is an elite closer.
What a great ad.
I mean, they have the reigning MVP over at first base in Jose Abreu. I love Tim Anderson, love Eloy Jimenez, even though the Cubs traded him. That was fine. That was worth it. Yasmani Grandal is a great catcher. I mean, one of the best in the league. So, I think I'm going to have to go with the White Sox and the Yankees. I think the Blue Jays were right there, but I think at least one of those reclamation pitching projects for the Yankees is going to come out and kind of refine that elite stuff. And I think the White Sox are a really complete team. We haven't really talked about them a ton because a lot of their signings were kind of early in the offseason. But I'll take Yankees, White Sox in the American League, and I'll take Dodgers, Padres in the National League.
Love it. Keaton, thank you so much, my man, for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. I'm always down to talk ball and always down to talk ball in the locker room app too. This is basically what the locker room app is with more people.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be sure to bring you back on, and I look forward to talking more ball with you down the road.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. Hey, it's Keaton Gillogly of the Modesto Nuts and of the MLB Group on the Locker Room app, as well as Michigan State women's basketball. You're listening to the Walk Off Podcast with Scott Belford and Adam Mack.
Buddy, you nailed it. There's that broadcast skill.
I know. There's definitely, you do it enough times, you're going to get it right, because when you don't do it right, you got to do it over again.